Before we start, a word of caution. As you know, STARS provides pre-hospital care for critically ill and injured patients who have sustained severe trauma or debilitating illnesses. It's what we do. As such, some of the details in this podcast may be difficult for some listeners. The STARS mission being explored this season involves graphic descriptions of physical injuries to a youth. Psychological impacts are also detailed. The patient's family and supporters have generously allowed us to tell this story as a personalized insight into STARS.
And for that, we are genuinely grateful. The community and everyone else who was involved welcomed us with open arms to help us tell this story. Having spent time with about 20 people researching it and recording interviews on the phone, virtually, in studio, and right at the scene of the incident, we can tell you this. Our conversations were raw and candid, and as such, some of the details uncomfortable. For this podcast, we've endeavored to tell the story accurately without being too sensational. Still, listener discretion is advised.
Pretty difficult at first just to come to grips with it, just that it happened in the first place, and definitely things that are bothered for a while. And I mean, they probably will for maybe years, I don't know.
Those calls stay with you, they're burning.
You'll never get those images out of your brain completely, but you learn to live with them.
But if you keep everything inside, you never talk about it, it's just going to keep on messing with you.
Your mental health is so important to protect, and if you don't, it can be super damaging for a very long time.
Welcome to Mission Ready, presented by ARC Resources. This STARS podcast breaks down, in detail, one mission each season to give you a stronger understanding of how we provide critical care anywhere and what happens before and after the mission. I'm Deborah Tetley.
And I'm Lyle Aspinall. In Season 2, we're analyzing an emergency response to a traumatic incident where a teenager was run over by an industrial-sized riding lawnmower in Laird, Saskatchewan. This is Episode 7, Processing Trauma, our final installment in this story.
By now you know Drayden Wolman is moving forward with positivity after almost losing his life to a riding lawnmower. You've heard from many people who were involved in giving him that second chance. And as you can imagine, every one of these people was psychologically impacted. One of our core values at STARS is safety, and it's always top of mind. Safety also refers to mental health, which was a common topic of discussion as we interviewed for this story. So in this episode, we're hearing from numerous people who are still processing their trauma.
It's a zero-turn mower. It's just operated.
You might remember
by the
Warren Peters from
ambulance
previous
here.
episodes. He's the foreman in Laird and was Drayden's boss when the incident happened. Warren was very generous with his time for us and very gracious, even when we asked him how he was coping as he stood outside the Laird village office a year later.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult at first just to come to grips with it in the first place, I guess.
Before we ever met him in person, Warren told Deb on the phone that knowing the Wolman family as well as he did made things that much more difficult.
So, it was kind of we had joked about it even before that. It's like a family business.
Mm-hmm.
Because, his mother worked for the town for, was it 2 years, 2 summers? And then the other son had worked just the previous summer. So then it was like he was going to, he was next in line kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know them well. And that's maybe what, eventually after that, what, hit me more was just because it's someone I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact or the situation that happened, it could have been anyone else. I wouldn't have known who it was. It wouldn't nearly hit me that hard, I'm sure. I can handle, blood and things like that do not affect me that much. So, but just who it was, I knew him, and I know he just lives right down the street from me, a couple houses. So, it's still dealing with that a little bit for sure. Something that'll probably always kind of be there too. It's just probably just that moment of finding him there. That was kind of like, hard to believe.
At STARS, we have a peer support program, which is automatically triggered whenever our crews attend a certain threshold of traumatic event. Drayden's was one such event.
It's important to talk about those calls to get those feelings out.
That's Glenn Pilon, Drayden's flight paramedic from STARS, who has been in paramedicine for 3 decades.
I see it as a vault. A lot of those calls that I've done where you go to a high school shooting, or you go to a plane crash, or you go to a Humboldt Broncos bus crash, or you go to something like this where Drayden's trapped, or somebody trapped in a head-on collision. And all those calls that you do, they get put into a vault in your mind, and you spin the lock on them, right? And they just sometimes it can get overwhelming. There's no more room for those calls in the vault because the vault is full. And so you need to go and you need to talk about them with a professional, because a lot of the stuff that we see are very traumatic and calls that can affect your mental health. So not only do you have to get lots of sleep and eat right and eat healthy and exercise, but you also have to take care of your mind as well.
Bailey Sinclair, the flight nurse who was on her very first solo shift with STARS when Drayden's mission occurred, was amazed by the support provided to her.
Everybody on our air medical crew that day was reached out to by a different member of the peer support team. But also just, I think our colleagues in those kinds of calls are so important too. I remember every colleague I worked with was like, hey, how are you doing? Do you want to talk about it? Asking questions, like making sure we were okay. So it's just so nice to work in such a supportive environment where everybody's really looking out for you, and when you've got an experience like that.
Eve Bolduc, one of the pilots who flew to Drayden's side, is part of our Saskatoon base's peer support team and stressed its importance.
But if you keep everything inside, you never talk about it, it's just going to keep on messing with you.
How proud are you, Eve, of the peer support program that we have here? And how does it compare, let's say, to, I don't know, the military?
Military, it was non-existent, as you can imagine, tough it out, and that's something you don't think about. That was your typical thing that I grew up with in the military. You just did not talk about your feelings, if not, there was a sign of weakness and whatnot. Since I've been at STARS, it's totally, with that education and everything else, learning about what creates. In fact, it takes courage for people, to actually, come out and talk to somebody else and open up. It takes courage for that. It takes trust, in somebody else as well, knowing that everybody else will have your back. And that's how we feel here at STARS, and I think it feels like this in each base as well, is that everybody's got your back. Everybody's here, for each other. Everybody's looking after each other's interests, because we are a team. When we go somewhere on a call, it's not about us, it's about the patient.
You'll recall from previous episodes, we spoke with Shay Evans, who was helping coordinate the logistics. Despite handling hundreds of calls in her time with the STARS Emergency Link Center, Drayden's story stands out in her memory.
Shay, when did you learn that Drayden made it?
When you emailed me.
Really?
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
Due to patient privacy regulations, our crews often don't know a person's outcome after transferring care at hospital, unless that patient reaches out to us later, which is how we came to know Drayden. But Shay remembers being impacted by his mission when it first came across her screen that afternoon in July 2022.
I remember this call, and it was such like a horrific call, and I was just like, I can't even imagine like the scene. And you feel for your medical crew, right? Like, we read the words, like we understand it, but our medical crew is out there seeing it, and so we kind of feel for them.
But you got to be a pretty strong person to sit in that chair, and you talked about that, all the training and whatnot. But you can't train how to be a strong person.
Yeah,
It takes a special person to do
You'll-
this job.
You learn quickly if you can, and you know what? It's no hard thing or not like a hard fault if you can't. Like, if you can't do it, it's best that you don't, because you don't want to push that kind of thing. Like, your mental health is so important to protect, and if you don't, it can be super damaging for a very long time. Like, you don't want to have that. So it's not a problem if it's not meant for you. We've had people who come in and they get their training, and then they sit in the chair and they hear the first call, and then they don't show up the next day. They're just like, I'm good. And
Mhm.
that's okay. It's for the best, don't push it.
So what about all of the other emergency service responders who were there, the ones who might not have an employer-backed peer support program? After all, according to volunteer first responder Kevin Burrell, it's the kind of sight that no one would ever expect to see.
It was too unreal to be real.
My understanding is that there was a kind of a group debrief afterward. I'm just wondering if you participated in that, and if you've taken any steps to kind of take care of your mental health along the way?
Yeah, I did. The Wall-Time group and the Laird group and the Rostern paramedics all got together at the Laird Fire Hall immediately after the call. The Laird group, they attend a lot fewer calls than we did in Wall-Time. They didn't have the extrication tools. They didn't do a lot of vehicle accidents, that kind of stuff. So we had seen a lot more of the traumatic calls than they had. Working through that, we've had people in to counsel our group in the past, and we made a regular habit of debriefing after any serious call. So I'd had more experience at that. So Chris asked me to lead the debrief. So we just kind of went around the room, and I had everybody just kind of go through what happened from their perspective. Once we got through the room, we had a small discussion on mental health and how to look for the signs afterwards, how it could be affecting you and maybe you don't realize it.
The Chris he's referring to is Laird Fire Chief Chris Dennis, who took the focus on mental health one step further, organizing a group session later on.
I was one of the ones that initiated the CISM into our town.
CISM stands for Critical Incident Stress Management and is a widely recognized intervention protocol focusing on psychological injuries caused by traumatic events.
They came in and did a debriefing. I told all my firefighters that it was pretty much mandatory you had to be there. If you didn't want to be there, I totally understood it, but you needed to be there. And pretty much every one of them was there. All the Wall-Time crew that was on scene that day were there. And Christine actually showed up and said thank you to everybody that was there and helped out.
Christine is Drayden's mom and is also a volunteer firefighter and first responder in her community.
When Drayden was released from the hospital, Chrissy and Drayden and her other son came to our fire hall in Wall-Time and told us about how everything went, and we got to talk with them. That was awesome.
Kevin's wife, Kayla Burrell, was another first responder by Drayden's side. She'd held the bag of blood that was transfusing into him while he was still trapped under the mower.
Drayden living and being okay, and not just living, but living in happiness and having a bright future really aids in the mental health journey, because you're not looking back, you're not questioning what you could have done better or what you did wrong, and so we can be a little easier on ourselves as we walk through what is similar to like a grief process. You'll never get those images or maybe the fear out of your brain completely, but you learn to live with it. And debriefing after a call is really important, and confiding in your teammates is really important.
She wasn't able to attend that day Drayden visited her fire hall, and she regrets it.
We had prior engagements, and I was torn between what I should do, and I was like, you know what, I'm doing okay, and I shouldn't have. So it's really important to be there in that safe place and realize that everybody else is going through the same thing and talking about it, because if you stuff it down, that's where the injury comes in. I've taken the BOS training.
BOS stands for Before Operational Stress. It's a program developed by Dr. Megan McElhern, who was a clinical psychologist. The program is designed for emergency responders to help them build proactive psychological tools. Dr. McElhern had a plea for that amazing demographic.
Please don't treat yourself like a machine, because you're not. You're made of flesh and blood and bone and have a soul and are impacted by things. And that's all the beautiful tapestry that makes us who we are. And so let's honor that and let's respect that.
We spoke at length with Dr. McElhern and the former paramedic she hired to lead the BOSS program about the unique aspects of mental health for emergency responders. It was a great conversation with a lot of important information, so next week we're going to release a bonus episode with that interview. For now, though, let's get back to Kayla and her appreciation for having some coping mechanisms in place.
And I love the BOS program because it was practical. This is what's happening in your brain. This is how it's working. And once I knew that, it's easier to go through the grief and feel the feelings and just understand the path, I guess. It just makes it easier. You're not just overwhelmed and you don't know why. There's answers. This is why. This is what your brain is doing.
And now, a quick word from our Season 2 sponsor.
As Canada's third largest natural gas producer and the largest producer of condensate, ARC Resources is proud to play an important role in the responsible development of Canada's energy resources. In delivering those resources, safety is the #1 priority, always. And it's that core value that makes ARC's partnership with Stars a natural fit. It's our shared goal to ensure that everyone arrives home safely at the end of the day. Learn more about how ARC is leading the way for safe and responsible energy development at arcresources.com.
Welcome back.
So now you have a sense of how Drayden's emergency responders were affected by this situation. But what about the Woolman family directly? First, let's talk to Sharon Kingston, the occupational therapist who has been guiding Drayden through the early stages of his physical and mental rehabilitation.
Everything about occupational therapy is breaking down the task to make it something that's achievable for the client because, yeah, it can be very defeating if you just see yourself coming in and doing something that you're not having success with. So you have to build on the small little pieces first and then progress forward to those larger pieces that bring the whole picture back together again.
I think it's interesting that you talked about the whole person, including mental health, without, not revealing your personal conversations with Drayden, but how do you see his mental health and wellness recovery going?
I would say really, really well. And I think a big part of it is, and I see it with other clients as well. If they have good social supports, their family, their friends, those kinds of things, their recovery is not that it's easy, but it's facilitated so much more by having those connections. If you're very much a loner, you don't have good social supports in the community, it's way more of a struggle. You don't have anybody to talk to and unload to in terms of, okay, I'm having a rough day today. Not having those people to talk to and converse with and try to sort through some of those things because obviously his life has changed immensely. It's just how do I work through that? But he's had great social supports, both his friend group, his family is amazing.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. The more we dug into this story, the more we learned about the strong support network behind Drayden. His mom, Christine, says it's all part of an outlook that starts at home.
I would just take every single day and just go with that day. And that's all that I taught Drayden to. And that, we're going to enjoy today and make every day positive.
And that kind of gets me thinking about your family's mental health. Is that how, you leaned into self-care, was just taking it one day at a time? Or how did you make sure that everyone stayed emotionally healthy?
Myself with my boys, they are really open and pretty much tell me everything. We always have conversations when things go wrong or things are troubling, disappointments. I always try to tell them that, okay, we need to look at it in a positive way. I've always taught them that the only person who can make you happy is you. And if it probably wasn't for our faith, we probably wouldn't be in the state that we are right now.
So, what about Drayden? After all, he's the only one in the story whose injuries go beyond the psychological. He lost an arm and severely injured his chest and foot. In fact, he was still working through those injuries when we saw him in Laird a year after the incident. He'll never be quite like he was for the first 16 years of his life. When he and his mom agreed to meet us in person behind the Laird Arena, we didn't realize it would be the first time he'd stood back there since everything happened.
Just to go back, your mom said that you guys hadn't been back here since you first got out of hospital. So you live, I can almost see your house from where we're standing, and you haven't walked back here.
Nope.
How come?
It was just, say, too many memories in that of what happened.
Well, I had no idea you guys hadn't been back here, so thanks for walking back here. That's super brave.
It's not that hard. I just try to keep a positive attitude around here, and yeah.
And according to a lot of the people we talked to, it seems to be working.
Drayden was pretty thankful.
Very positive. So positive and happy and
an amazing outlook on life.
This kid's going to go places in life.
I don't know if I could be that positive if I was in the same position.
He's been a joy to work with, quite honestly.
For that kid at this age to show that resiliency,
I don't think there'll be much that'll slow him down now.
When I first met Drayden in person, it was at the place where his life changed forever. I was amazed by not only his willingness to share his story and his life altering experience in this very personal way, but also by his positive outlook on life and his future. Drayden's not looking back, and I think we can all learn a lot from that perspective.
And where does that come from? Where do you get this this strength? I think that this is a significant life-changing event, and you're a teenager, and I feel like a whole bunch of stuff going on, and then suddenly you're faced with this, but you're pushing through. How do you do that?
Think positive and just keep looking forward, not the past. Basically, is what I do mostly. And I guess it's just from hanging out with my friends too, of course.
Well, this was part of a video interview, and if you listen closely, you'll hear his mom, off camera, assertively clear her throat.
Yeah.
I think you're supposed to say friends and family.
Friends and family, sorry.
Do you want to try that again?
Sure, yes. Sorry, I forgot. And I guess that's been keeping me positive is my friends and my family. You keep giving positivity to me in that.
That isn't to say his new journey is easy. It's far from it. The first time we interviewed him, he told us point blank that he was tired of talking about the incident.
To be honest, it's sort of annoying-ish. Like, I don't even really think about it, and it makes me happy not thinking about it. But whenever it brings it up, it just, I don't know, feels weird, I guess, is the word.
His annoyance is understandable. His life has come to be defined by this moment. But when you meet Drayden, you quickly realize he's not interested in looking backward. He's very excited about what lies ahead.
After high school, I want to be a truck driver. Truck across the whole entire country. And the States, too, if I take loads out there. And then go to college for starting up a business.
Yeah, Drayden has big plans for his future. In fact, while we were editing this episode, his mom sent me a video of a new high-tech prosthetic that he was excited to be getting soon. Point is, he's looking forward, not backward. Now, a few moments ago, you heard Drayden tell us that our visit with him was the first time he had walked in the location of his incident since it occurred. But interestingly, although it was the first time he had walked back there, it wasn't the first time he had been back there.
So tell us about the day that Drayden was finally discharged from hospital. What was that like? What was it like thinking about Drayden's future? What his life would look like, slightly altered now?
We just took one day at a time. Like, I got to bring him home in between. We got to take a weekend pass. So I let him drive around town in the car. I want to say we were going like maybe 20, 15, not going very fast, just cruising. And he asked if he could go to the back of the arena. And I said, of course you can. So we went there and he sat and we parked in the back of the arena there. And it was amazing. He asked where everything was. I told him exactly where his shoe was. I told him where the lawnmower was, how it was placed, where the fire truck was, where the ambulance was, where stars landed. And then it was such a calm, I want to say it was a Saturday evening. Like it wasn't dark yet. We rolled down the windows and there was like, all you could hear was just the wind through the trees. There was no dogs barking. It was just so nice and calm. And I told him, I said that let's close our eyes and let's make this place into a positive place. So we did that. And then it was kind of cool when we were listening through the wind through the trees. And I says, doesn't that sound like the ocean touching the shore? And he goes, yeah, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, I sort of thought about it, like listening to the waves crash on the beach, I guess. Pretend I was on the beach in Vancouver looking over the sunset. And I sort of made peace with that area where my accident happened.
And that's a wrap on Season 2 of Mission Ready, presented by ARC Resources. Thank you to everyone who listened, and thank you especially to everyone who helped us tell this story. From the STARS crew, to the various emergency responders involved along the way, to the community of Laird, and especially to the Woolman family for being so accommodating.
Mm-hmm. You know, I just have to say, I'm amazed at how generous this teenager has been. You and I both have teenagers, and I just, the tiniest thing sets them off sometimes, like many teens. And
it can be tough to be a teenager.
It is tough to be a teenager. And then you take this life-altering incident and, he's got these hopes and dreams. He's got this summer job because he wants to save for a car. And all of that just, almost you'd think it would vanish because of this incident that he's been through, but that's not the case. He stays positive. He stays focused. He looks forward. And I remember you told me about this kid after the VIP visit, and I thought, wow, he sounds interesting, but he's more than that. He's remarkable. We can't overemphasize how positive this kid is, that many times you and I looked at each other and were like, wow, this is incredible.
And in the times that I've met him, I was always amazed that he just never complained about any of it. At least not that I got to see. He would show us his prosthetic arm, how it worked. I saw him illustrate both for you and I and for the crews at the STARS hangar. He happily illustrated how the prosthetic arm worked, and he was more than happy to answer questions and ask questions, and he just didn't hide anything. He didn't complain. And when we met him in Laird, he just seemed like any other kid, any other kid out in a rural community working on his car with his grandpa. If we weren't talking about the story, it would have looked like any other scene. And it was just so remarkable what he has come through and the attitude that he's taken.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, from beginning to end, just meeting this teenager, meeting the family, meeting the people. I mean, there's been tears sitting right here in this studio just because of the heavy, heavy material. And what an honor and a privilege to have been part of this story. I'll never forget Drayden.
Yeah, me neither. Although this is the last episode where we focus on Drayden's story explicitly, there is a bonus episode coming where we have an impactful conversation with a couple of experts whose research is specifically about mental health and emergency responders.
And listeners, if you liked this season of Mission Ready, go back and check out Season 1, where Lyle and I tell the story of STAR's very important patient, Marcy Burkett. This woman survived a cougar attack.
Yeah, and as always, thanks to Kaya Gamble, the young musical prodigy who created our theme music. Her career is really taking off right now. Seriously, you want to check it out. Check it on social media, kayagamble.com. And by the way, both of her parents used to work for STARS.
And remember, STARS is a physician-led, not-for-profit organization that can only exist because of your support. Please, get involved at stars.ca. Until next time, thanks for listening.